Okay, now just talk. Just talk to each other.
It's okay. I understand. These are just questionnaires. They have question that's important to you, like ask them, fill it out, and then I'll hand it off to Rich. And they're going to each do their presentations, and hopefully they'll answer all of these.
Okay, well, welcome.
25 seconds.
Thanks for being here. My name is Rich Fletcher. Obviously, you saw my literature back there. I am running for Assembly District 12 here in the district. Me and another lady are running for an open seat. Your current assembly person is termed out. When I go knock on doors, this topic tonight is the #1 topic I'm asked. What's my position? What do I think? And I've knocked on over 3,500 doors in this district. And I thought, well, instead of me trying to answer this, because I'm not an electrician, I'm not an electricity guy, I'm bringing in experts. And we've seen the commercials on TV, we heard them on the radio, but I figured, and kudos to the panel, they wanted to come and speak to you face to face and present their side. So real quick, we're going to go through the panel, and then I have some questions that they already know, because I wanted them to be prepared. But I think the real meat of this is going to be when you start asking questions. And if you haven't done so, if you haven't filled out one of these cards yet with your question, please do so. And we'll just go right through. We're going to give everyone up here a fair chance, but I just want to do a little introduction first. Blake Wynn. Let me put my glasses on so I don't make things up. Blake is the Nevada Director with the Western Way, a conservative organization that supports free market principles, advocates for clean energy options and open competitive energy market. He believes in helping educate the consumers and legislators on energy choices. And then obviously you have the rest here. Scott Rutledge, right here. Love that jacket, very nice. He's a partner with Argentum Partners, a Nevada-based communications firm with over 50 years of public policy service. He's originally from Texas, and he's been here since 2004. His areas of policy work include energy and the environment. Probably a good guy to start asking questions to. And then Chris Brooks in the middle, he is a current assemblyman for District 10, not District 12. Don't vote for Chris, you can't. Chris is interesting. He's a fourth-generation Nevadan and native of Las Vegas. He has more than 25 years of experience in electrical contracting, renewable energies, and utilities industry. He formed a solar electric, the Las Vegas Solar Electric, which is a pioneer in the rooftop solar industry. From 2004 to 2014, he was director of the Bombard Renewable Energy, and in 2014, he joined the Valley Electric Association. Chris has been currently working on, correct me if I'm wrong, possible legislation in case question 3 is approved. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you'll definitely have more opportunity to expound on that. He was elected in 2016 to the 10th District in the state legislature, serving in the 79th legislative session. So thank you, sir, for being here. And then last but not least, Tracy Skinnendor, did I say it right? She is here on behalf of No on 3. She's the communications director at Coalition to Defeat Question 3. She's skilled in marketing, public relations, and communication executive with measurable success. So, and again, I didn't read verbatim because we're all adults here, but these are for you. We try to get a panel that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other to give you the knowledge that you need to make to vote. Because it's not the legislators who are going to vote on this issue in November, it's going to be you. So, and we are all ratepayers, if you will. So no matter what side of the political spectrum we're on, or anywhere, we all pay. So one way or another. But before we get started with the questions, I want to bring my friend Crystal up here. Crystal works for Robco. She's the one that, she sat down with me, she goes, Rich, you need to put on a town hall meeting. So I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so I took her advice, and here we are. So real quick, Crystal.
Here's everybody. Hi, my name is Crystal Hosmer from Robco Electric. We are a C2 electrical contractor here in Las Vegas. We've been in business for 22 years. We're also a solar panel installer. So as you can imagine, we have got flooded with questions about question 3. Robco is neutral on the issue simply because it is pretty complex, as we're going to discover tonight with our panelists. And again, because we're getting those questions, we wanted to bring this to you, the voters, so that you can be informed on this issue. Just a quick reminder, if you are not registered to vote, the registration deadline is October 18th, so get moving and get out there and vote. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and she was kind enough with her company to bring all the food, snacks, and drinks. And I believe they're having a raffle back there as well, so if you guys want to fill that out, they probably will take down your email address. Am I right, Crystal?
Yes, we will.
Yes, you will. So, without any, yeah. Thank you. Excellent question. All right, let's get started. Again, they know what the questions are. I didn't want to turn this into an ambush. Did that help? I didn't want to turn this into an ambush because they're here on their own time. And it's their chance to educate you on where they stand. So we're going to start right with Scott here first. Tell us, what does question 3 actually do? What is it going to do for us?
I'll try to talk loud. Can you? Oh, great. Thank you.
I apologize, I have bronchitis, so don't normally sound this cool.
So question 3 basically changes the state's constitution to eliminate the electric monopoly that currently exists in the state of Nevada. You do not have to do this through the Constitution. That's a question people ask. We chose to do it that way, and we can explain more about that later. I'm sure you'll have questions. And basically, then it instructs the legislature to design a restructured energy market that allows for competition. At its very core, that's what this does. Whether or not how we do it, what it looks like, we're going to leave that up to Assemblyman Brooks and his colleagues. The regulators, the PUCN will be involved in this process. But that's what it's asking you to do. Do we keep things the way they are today, or do we make a big change? It's a big change. It's not a simple change. And do we go down that path? At its core, that's what question 3 is asking you to do.
And again, just as a reminder, we're going to limit, we don't want a half-hour responses. Blake's like, darn it. If we can stay within inside that 2-minute time frame, because I know there's some great questions out here. So Tracy, can you answer? We already heard from Scott. What do you think question 3 is actually going to do for us?
Sure. So I'm with the Coalition to Defeat Question 3, and it is a constitutional amendment that would dismantle and deregulate our current electricity system. And as you heard, it would leave it to our state legislators and the courts to determine how to implement and execute the new electricity system. A couple just quick things. We feel that it's risky and costly and would lead to a lot of uncertainties if this were to pass. The ballot language, it's very vague the way it's written. There literally is no plan proposed other than what you heard Scott share, that they would truly just leave it to our state legislators and the courts to determine how to implement. So again, we just really don't know what we're voting on. It locks this into the Constitution, so when things go wrong, it would take at least 4 years to unravel and undo this out of the Constitution, if not longer, all the while costing taxpayers and ratepayers billions of dollars in the process. So for those that may not know, and I'll try to be brief, Nevada's rates currently are 17% below the national average of electricity rates around the country. So we already have one of the nation's most reliable electricity systems today with the lowest electricity rates in the nation. Also in other states that have attempted deregulation, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, their electricity rates are actually 30% higher than Nevada's rates today. We've seen in other states that attempted deregulation, it just hasn't worked. They've had a lot of issues with rate hikes. rolling blackouts, less reliable electricity system, less consumer protections, and the list goes on. So I really encourage you guys to look into this further, get the facts. We have websites, which I'm sure we'll share later on. But just the last thing I do want to share is that the Public Utilities Commission did a report on this, and they found that if this passes, it would cost ratepayers $4 billion. That would be on the shoulders of all of us as residential ratepayers and small businesses.
Okay, thank you. Assemblyman Brooks, please.
So what this does is it adds a 23rd section to Article 1 of the Nevada Constitution. Article 1 of the Nevada Constitution is like the Bill of Rights of Nevadans in our Constitution. And there were 22 different sections in Article 1. And they do things like protect us from trial by jury. They do things like protect us from excess bail, the right to keep and bear arms. It keeps Nevadans from having soldiers quartered in private homes. Things that are fundamental rights for all Nevadans. And what this does is adds to it open competitive retail energy market, granting monopolies, exclusive franchises for generation of electricity prohibited, severability, effective November 27, 2018, if this passes. And then it adds 510 words to the Nevada Nevada Constitution that put into the Nevada Constitution, and this would be the only state in the United States of America who's done this through a constitutional amendment. It defines how we do business in the state with our energy markets. Nowhere else in the entire Constitution, in all the sections and all the articles and all the thousands and thousands of words, do we define anything about how we do energy or how we do treat electricity. And so that to me is fundamentally what this does. And the rest, hopefully we'll get the opportunity to talk about it, are the details around that. But I think that's what we always need to keep sight of. This is what that does, regardless of what, with all due respect, both campaigns say or advocates or opponents of it.
And finally, Blake.
I'm not sure what to touch on there. It seemed you guys touched on it. You know, from my standpoint, this is a constitutional amendment. My personal belief, and the one of the Western way, is that right now large corporations and MB Energy do have a constitutional right to go and pick their energy, right? All the big casinos, they can go out. They want to do 100% renewable energy, they can. If you would like to go 100% renewable energy right now, you cannot. So what this does is it gives you the same constitutional right as all these large major corporations, right? That's our stance. That's what the verbiage says. Is there some uncertainty with this passing? Yes. Is there also uncertainty with MB Energy moving forward? Absolutely.
Thank you. So question 2, we'll start with Tracy. We'll try to be fair here. This is a 2-part question, so you pick the part that applies to you, okay? What are the backers trying to accomplish by changing the Constitution, or why does the other side want it kept out of the state Constitution?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, right? We've heard a little bit about the risks and uncertainties of locking this into our Constitution, and when things go wrong, it would take at least 4 years, if not longer, to undo the damage. But the reality is, no state, as Chris shared, has ever attempted to deregulate their electricity market through a constitutional amendment. No state in our country. It's also been 20 years since any state has attempted electricity deregulation. And even in the Gwynn Center, in honor of Governor Gwynn, right, the Gwynn Center did an independent report on question 3, and they even stated that if question 3 passes and our state legislators determine this will not work for our state, rates will be higher, it's going to cost consumers and ratepayers billions of dollars, they would be forced to walk the plank because it would be locked in our state constitution. There's something to be said for that. It's too risky, and there are way too many uncertainties behind that. So I think people need to realize the severity of locking this into our state constitution, as we heard Chris share, literally changing our constitution. No state in our country has ever done that. There's reasons for that because it's risky. And I think just one last comment I'll say is that you hear from the yes side, the proponents, that they trust our state legislators to implement this, and they'll leave it to them to figure this out. But in the same breath, they say we have to lock this in the Constitution so that they will actually implement it. So which is it? Do we trust our legislators or do we not? There's a lot of conflicting information there.
Senator Brooks, please.
I have heard from folks that work on the Yes on 3 campaign that the reason why that we have to put this in the legislature, in the Constitution, is because that NV Energy's lobbyists are so powerful that the legislature is enabled to act. And then as Tracy said, but in the same campaign, I've heard, but we're so talented and capable that we'll figure it all out. And so it's important, and I take offense to that, but it's important to realize the timeline here about how this works in the Constitution. It was voted on by a vote of the people in 2016. It has to be voted on again by a vote of the people in 2018, at which point it will immediately change the Constitution of Nevada. Then, within the constitutional amendment, it says no later than July 1st of 2023, the Nevada legislature has to figure this all out. Now, currently there are 2,200 Nevada revised statutes and Nevada administrative codes that govern how all of this works together. Now, we would have to address all or most of all of those codes and statutes. The Nevada legislature has 1,100 bills it processes any given legislative session. Only 500 of them ever see the light of day. We are going to do all of this in 3 sessions. We only meet 120 days every other year. So that's 362 working days. We have to get all this accomplished. I'm asking you, what else are we not going to do while we're trying to fix this, trying to enact this solution in search of a problem?
Thank you. Blake, you need your question reread, or are you good? Sure. Two-part, depending on what side you're on. What are the backers trying to accomplish by changing the state constitution? Or why does the other side want it kept out of the state constitution?
Okay, so one, I do think that the legislators are smart enough to handle this on their own. I do think that NV Energy does have a lot of influence in the state. I think that's just a given. We see that on a lot of the East Coast states, and Florida Light Power, they essentially own that entire state, and they push through anything that they want. I go back to, again, of why Yes on 3 wants this in, because it does force us, our legislators, and whoever else can be working on it, to make sure that it is the right market for us. We probably need more time. Yes, I do think we'll probably need more time to implement this correctly. That's just kind of where I'm at. I think that Mr. Brooks is probably one of the leading experts in energy in the state of Nevada. I do think that his team can put together a lot of great ground rules and structures for this upcoming market if this passes.
And then finally, Scott, again, you need your question reread, or are you good? Thank you.
So I want to touch on a couple of things. There is regulatory capture by the utility in the state. Most of you remember what happened when they took away rooftop solar. Those 3 PUCN commissioners are no longer on that commission. They were all replaced. Okay, and it's not to say they were bad people, but look, mischief happens, right? We've got a corporate monopoly. Remember, corporate monopoly. You're going to hear about corporations. This is only for corporations. Right now, our entire decision about electricity in this state is determined by a corporate monopoly owned by Warren Buffett. Okay, we'll talk about the backers on both sides. I know that's the question, but I just say that's important to note that. The no side will tell you it's risky and costly, but in a third of the states in this country, a third of Americans population-wise live in states with competitive choice. You'll hear things like, well, they pay higher prices. You can't compare Nevada utility rates to even California utility rates, much less New Hampshire or Vermont. Every state is different. Okay, so what we have the opportunity to do in Nevada is one thing. We have a chance to eliminate the influence that the utility has carried forever on our electricity markets in this state and restructure something. We're not starting from scratch. I am one of the ones who say I have full faith in our legislature and the PUCN. Tracy says courts, I say regulators, whatever. Maybe in the energy sues, maybe this thing goes to courts. Good on them if they decide to do that. That's not what our initiative is asking. We're not saying let's go to the courts. words with it. We're saying, legislature, do your job. And I've known Chris and I've worked with Chris. And I know that they have a lot of things that they also want to work on behalf of all of us at the legislature. But of those bills, those 500 bills that do get processed every session, how many of them are already related to energy? A fifth? Maybe a sixth? Yeah, there's a lot of conversation every session about energy. The reason we want this in the Constitution is because those conversations have not produced what we think you all deserve, which is a choice in where your energy comes from.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Now to Senator Brooks.